Before we move on to complete all of the images on this page, I wanted to discuss one other alternative, as if there weren't enough already. But I've mentioned how the images that we're creating here are bitmap images, which means that the information in the file has to do with the color and position of individual pixels. But the alternative to bitmap images are vector images. And vector images have information about particular shapes. So our font icons are an example of those. If you looked at the source code for the font, it would show calculations of the different curves and the different lines and how they come together to form shapes. Now, when we used Fontastic, it said that we could upload an SVG file, which stands for a scalable vector graphics file, to use as one of our font icons. And it's also possible to use SVG files as images inside of the browser. Now, SVG images are good for particular scenarios. Specifically, the image needs to have crisp lines. That is, if it's a sort of pixel-based image, like an actual photograph, it's probably not going to work very good as an SVG. But if it's something like a single shape, similar to what we used font icons for, or it's an image that has crisp lines, and hopefully was generated initially with a vector file, then that can be a good opportunity to use an SVG file. If you do, there are some pretty cool fancy things you can do with that image in your browser, scalability being one of those. So just to demonstrate how this works, I've generated an SVG file for this logo. It's a good candidate for it. I had a vector file to begin with, and you can also access that if you can open up Photoshop and take a look at the mockup. The layers for this logo can be exported to Adobe Illustrator, and then Illustrator in turn can export it into an SVG. We're not going to go through that whole process, but instead we'll use the one that I made earlier. So if you go to the resource pack in the part 1 steps, there's step 42.logo.svg.step. So let's copy this and go over to our base directory, and let's paste it in our images and rename it logo.svg. I'll go back to the browser, and let's add a new image on top of our source set image, and we'll set the source to images logo.svg. We'll save it and refresh the browser, and here it is. Now the size isn't right, but we can adjust that with the height and width attributes, and as we expand the browser, you can see as it gets bigger, the lines are still very crisp. So in this particular use case, it feels like an SVG file might be the ideal. If we do a quick can I use search for SVG, you'll see that it has pretty good support and that the big culprit for not supporting it is IE8. So if IE8 is important, then you'll want to offer a fallback for this. I think for this project, let's stick with the bitmap images. The SVG version isn't a bad idea, but we'll just stick with the source set option for now. Okay, I'll go back to the site here and refresh. And let's put this image inside of our header. So I'll cut this, and it's in the header top, and I'll save it. There we go.